God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Benigno. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor, and I am here breaking down the Karen Read case. And today, yes, I could do a review, given that we have a nice long weekend before the Commonwealth finishes out their case with Dr. Welsher. Could do that. We could review this week and the absolute beating that expert Shannon Burgess took at the hands of Robert Alessi.
Have you heard of the term confirmation bias?
Yes, I have heard of that term.
Are you familiar with the phrase academic dishonesty?
Yes, I am.
We could talk about this arrogant Dr. Isaac Wolf.
You haven't acted as a forensic pathologist in...
I am, if you could have asked that question very straightforward. I am not a forensic pathologist. I'm a brain surgeon.
Right. And you don't perform autopsies, correct, sir? You're a brain surgeon.
Correct. In other words, I see more brains than the forensic pathologist.
Right. And is it correct to say that the brains that you see are of living people?
Correct.
Not to be confused with Dan Wolf from ARCA. Could talk about him. Could talk about the, I guess, essentially meaningless glass expert, taillight expert. We could talk about DNA, maternal line, whatever. But what I want to talk about today is something I mentioned recently, but I have to belabor the point because what we are seeing from Judge Beverly Cannone is such a disgrace, is so disgusting. But now I am finally starting to get it. Now it is all making sense. And you can thank the Norfolk County Bar Association for making it so clear to all of us. So thank you, Norfolk County Bar Association, because you finally helped me to understand why it is that Judge Beverly Cannone appears to be so egregiously outright biased against the defense and has since 2022. I thank you for honoring Judge Beverly Cannone with your Person of the Year title. Thank you so much. As I mentioned, I've been looking into Judge Beverly Cannone because after the egregious, unimaginable disgrace that was the ARCA voir dire, and I just happened to catch this incident.
Do you recognize reading that?
Yes.
Do you recognize discussing the case before you testified on June 24, 2024?
I never discussed this with him. This is something that I sent to him, that I did on my own, and that I sent to him. But he never asked this of me, and we never discussed it.
So you sent him what you thought would be the best questions and answers for him to ask you when you testified?
So this is something I routinely do when I work with attorneys, okay? I prepare this on my...
After seeing that in real time, I started to think, okay, I'm not an attorney. Clearly, I'm not a judge. So I don't know what the standard is. But I've seen a few trials. And to me, this doesn't seem right. Something about this interaction is pretty shady. But then this week, during the Shannon Burgess cross-examination, we saw this.
With regard to the phone of Mr.
and whether it refreshes your recollection on any comments Mr. Whiffen made about Pakistan.
Objection.
I'm going to see it sidebar for 2 minutes on this.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, wouldn't you know it, after 3 years of doing everything in her power to block any effort at a fair trial, any way that she could without being thrown off this case by Judge Beverly Cannone, after 3 years of doing that, and we just all happened to notice this signaling to Hank Brennan to object, all of a sudden, for the last 2 days of this trial, the judge is a fair judge.
Yeah, I think most of the parts were plastic. I'm not 100% sure if the entire thing was plastic. There may have been other material, but portions were plastic.
But you certainly didn't see any glass inherent in the manufacture process.
I'd have to double check my notes, but I don't think I did.
Okay.
Do you want her to check her notes?
Why don't you? Are your notes in front of you?
Yes.
With the court's permission.
Sure.
And this is how you know how biased she is, because the first time that this woman has seemed fair at all, and I'm not talking like she's leaning on the side of the defense, I'm talking just fair. It's so noticeable that all of us can tell. All of us are like, that's weird. Judge is being fair. What? What's wrong? So you have to wonder, somebody somewhere must have a relationship with the judge and must have tipped her off to the fact that all of us are onto her. Oh, no, Sam, don't be ridiculous. She's a judge. No, judges don't behave that way. You don't understand. She's a judge. Well, this is what I have to say to all my attorney friend analysts who really do not want to say it. This is what I have to say to you. This is Norfolk County. And here's what I now know for sure about Norfolk County. While everybody else is looking at Michael Proctor, and they were so quick to throw him under the bus, I have been investigating who his bosses are, because as a psychologist, it is very clear to me that Michael Proctor does not have the IQ or the authority to ever plant evidence to do anything outside of the chain of command. But here's the thing. It is also equally clear that he doesn't have to, because he thinks nothing at all of telling all of his bosses that he's looking for nudes on Karen Ray's phone. Thinks nothing of speaking flagrantly about what a nutbag she is and what a nutbag the ME is about putting pressure on the medical examiner to change her determination. And luckily for us, there's not many people in Norfolk County that have integrity, but there are a few. And two who I would argue are the most important in this case, Dr. Scorti-Bello and Dr. Stonebridge, two scientists who have upheld their integrity despite probably constant pressure from the district attorney's office just down the hall to change her opinion. Dr. Scorti-Bello, that is. I think Dr. Stonebridge is a little further away in Boston. So I know that Michael Proctor doesn't have the authority to plant taillight. But you know who does? You know who does have that authority? And who just so happens to be the right arm of our district attorney, Michael Morrissey? Brian Tully. Look at the smile on his face there. Did you see that, by the way? Did you see the smile on his face in that? I didn't notice this until right now. Brian Tully, the same guy who's been communicating with Shannon Burgess up until this week when he was absolutely decimated by Robert Alessi. Lieutenant Brian Tully, who he's been on the phone with. It's Lieutenant Brian Tully, who's been by the side of every witness as they sit with Hank Brennan to prepare for testimony, for cross-examination.
First of all, who'd you meet with 3 weeks ago?
I met with Mr. Brennan and his staff.
And when you say his staff, who else?
I honestly couldn't tell you, sir.
Mr. Lally?
One female, one, I believe, state trooper.
Okay. Had you ever met State Trooper Tully previously?
Yes, sir. Actually, I believe that was him.
It was State Trooper Tully?
Yes, sir.
Whom you've met with several times, correct?
Prior to that, I believe only once or twice.
He was the one that he has formally interviewed you previously, correct?
I believe he arranged the meetings with Mr. Brennan, but beyond that, I can't speak to.
The conversations with Mr. Morrissey, the elected district attorney, what were the circumstances under which you contacted Mr. Morrissey?
Well, during the course of this trial, the witnesses have been harassed.
That's not my question.
Objection.
But I'm answering your question.
Hold on. I'm going to sustain the objection. Next question.
Thank you. Were you phoning him? Were you meeting him? Were you texting him? That's my question. The circumstances of the communication itself.
I phoned the office asking for a meeting, had a meeting, and then he left a voicemail at some point and texted me and said, I just left you a voicemail.
Okay. Was that the extent of your conversations with Mr. Morrissey, the elected DA?
I had one other meeting with other witnesses and the DA.
And turning to Yuri Buknik, what were the logistics? I'll use that word instead of circumstances. What were the logistics of you contacting Yuri Buknik? Was it by phone? Was it in-person meetings, text messages, or all of the above? All of the above.
All of the above.
How many times would you say that you've spoken with Yuri Buknik?
Spoken or communicated?
Sorry, good point. Communicated with?
Probably 20.
Where was the meeting?
At the DA's office.
Who else was there?
Different times that I would meet with him, Steve Nelson would be there. One time, Brian Tully was there.
And that interview was conducted by whom?
I met at the DA's office with the prosecutor, Adam Lally.
And there was also a state trooper there?
There was.
Lieutenant Tully?
Correct.
Okay.
It's Brian Tully who is in charge of the CERT team investigation where, guess what they found? Taillight. And it just so happens that when they found taillight.
Once you reconstructed the taillight, you'll agree with me that it was missing a piece, correct? Or pieces?
There was an empty spot on the overall reconstruction, yes.
Were you ever provided with any pieces of taillight that would have filled in that missing spot?
No.
Were you ever provided or told about any pieces recovered from 1 Meadows Ave in Canton?
No.
Were you ever told about a collision at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton?
Day after day over the course of the month, when the taillight just revealed itself, they happened to find the entire taillight minus one little section in the middle. The one little section that both Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe, early on in this case, and Karen Reed happened to see wasn't there. The only part of the taillight that was cracked the night of January 29th, 2022. So it was Brian Tully, who we learn had 5 guys in street clothes that the people on the CERT team didn't recognize. I don't know. I assume they were cops, but I don't know who they were. I mean, they looked kind of familiar. And we learned from Brian Tully when he testified in the last trial that he took his orders directly from the district attorney himself, Michael Morrissey.
If anyone else was involved in those conversations?
The district attorney.
That would be Mr. Morrissey, is that correct?
Yes.
There you go. There's who our decision makers are from Michael.
At some point, over the course of this case,
guess what? Michael Morrissey is from Quincy, Massachusetts, born and raised. And guess what else? In 2022, Michael Morrissey was granted Person of the Year by the Norfolk County Bar Association. The same association and the same award that this year Judge Beverly Cannone has been awarded. Oh, I forgot to mention. Guess where Judge Beverly Cannone is from? You guessed it. Quincy, Massachusetts. That's right. In fact, interestingly enough, Michael Morrissey's dad was one of Judge Bev's teachers in high school, the plumber teacher. So, you tell me, what do you think? Ever since this case started, and if you're new to the Karen Read saga, you really should go back and watch some of the earlier Turtle Boy episodes. I want to say start around like 580, episode 580, somewhere around there. Look for Judge Bev. Look for the early hearings into 2023 hearings for the Karen Read case, and you will see the egregious discovery violations, the egregious attempts to obstruct justice in every way that they could, so much so that eventually Alan Jackson stands up and he asks the judge to respectfully recuse herself because it keeps coming out that she has direct relationships with witnesses in the case.
In the courts of Massachusetts, I know full well.
Oh yeah, she knows
the importance of a fair and impartial.
Oh right,
judge.
yeah, totally, yeah.
The Massachusetts Declaration of Rights makes sure that every citizen who appears before the court has a fair and impartial judge, and I know full well how to follow my oath.
Oh yeah, sure you do.
Comply
right.
with my ethical obligations.
Oh my God.
All 4 points raised in the defendant's motion are without merit.
Oh.
The motion is denied. I will have written findings by the end of today summarizing what I've said here. And I will give you, Mr. Jackson, whatever time you need to appeal this decision. How much time do you think you need?
They don't appeal it.
Yes.
Look at Bukkake there, smiling, loving it, next to Fanning. Oh, I wonder if he's thinking about Sandra Birchmore there. Probably not. He didn't put much thought into her at all.
There's one relationship that Alan Jackson and this defense has completely overlooked and failed to mention. You guessed it. The relationship between Michael Morrissey and Judge Beverly Cannone. So, at each stage of this investigation, the district attorney's office has done everything they can to double down to ensure that Karen Read is convicted. From the very beginning, they just assumed that she was going to roll over and take it up the ass, but she didn't, because a guy named Steve Scanlon, a few days after Karen Read was arrested, came to Yannetti and said, look at the people in the house. It probably never dawns on them to do that had somebody not told them to. And from that point on, Karen Read starts to fight. And two decisions that she makes were humongous decisions. She decides to try to find and elicit the help of Alan Jackson out in California. Decision one. Once Alan Jackson's involved, they decide to bring the case to the feds. And they present the case to the FBI. And they say, look, you might be interested in this. Now, the way that federal investigations work, anybody can bring them any case, and they may or may not look into it, but you will not be told. They're just going to say, great, thank you so much. Bye, there's the door. And that is what happened here. And as, of course, it turns out, we now know they did investigate. But one fact that none of us, or at least I, never really considered, what they were investigating was whether or not Karen Read was guilty. Because when they gave the defense all of their discovery material, all of the material that they dug up, including the reports from ARCA, that material was exculpatory. It was the feds saying, yeah, we don't think she did this because he wasn't hit by a car. Not only that, because then that was where they got the Higgins texts. Oh, somebody else might have a motive. That's where they saw the Proctor texts. Oh, the cops were a little shady here. So that was decision number one. The second decision that she made was to find Turtle Boy and to get him involved. Because once he was involved, he had the skill, the desire, the means, the relationships to figure out what was going on and to expose the Commonwealth and Norfolk County and the district attorney's office for being the corrupt piece of human beings that they are. This group of cops that came out of the DA's office, there is a cultural problem, but that cultural problem is a political problem. It is above their pay grade. It is a problem at the higher levels. It is a problem with Mr. Michael Morrissey.
This will be the first statement of its kind in my dozen years as Norfolk District Attorney. The harassment of witnesses in the murder prosecution of Karen Reed is absolutely baseless. It should be an outrage to any decent person, and it needs to stop. Innuendo is not evidence. False narratives are not evidence. However, what evidence does show is that John O'Keefe never entered the home at 34 Fairview Road in Canton the night he died. Location data from his phone, recovered from the lawn beneath his body when he was transported to the hospital, shows that this phone did not enter that home. 11 people have given statements that they did not see John O'Keefe enter the home at 34 Fairview that night. 0 people have said that they saw him enter the home. 0. No one. Some have, without any evidence, pointed to 18-year-old Colin Albert, a nephew of the homeowner, and accused him of attacking John O'Keefe as he entered the home. But phone evidence shows O'Keefe never entered the home at all. Testimony from witnesses tell us that 18-year-old Colin Albert had left his uncle's home before John O'Keefe and Karen Reed had arrived outside the residence. There was no fight inside that home. John O'Keefe did not enter the home. Colin Albert, the young man being vilified, was not present when Reed's vehicle and John O'Keefe arrived on the street. This is a false narrative. Colin Albert didn't commit murder. Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, and Brian Albert. These people were not part of a conspiracy and certainly did not commit murder or any crime that night. They have been forthcoming with authority.
Well, it's kind of like a butt dial.
Testimony was then that you were in an intimate situation, I'll put it that way, with Nicole at the time. And that's how you butt dialed Brian Higgins, correct?
I don't believe I said that's how I butt dialed Brian Higgins.
That's the time.
I think I said there was a time frame that was close.
Okay.
So I didn't say that, no.
All right. What you said was you were in an intimate situation with Nicole at the time that the butt dial occurred, correct?
I'm not sure if you have something you can read me or show me.
So you've been interviewed many times by different law enforcement agencies, be they Massachusetts State Police, Canton Police, or otherwise, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Those interviews have not just been over the period of weeks, it's been over the period of weeks and months and even years since this occurred, correct?
Yes.
You were contacted by another law enforcement agency that was not Massachusetts State Police and not Canton Police Department at one point in April of 2023. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I want to talk for a second about that series of interview, or that interview. You were contacted at your residence by these members of this law enforcement agency, correct?
Yes.
All right. Later that same day, you did sit down with those same law enforcement officers for a formal interview.
On
On that same day that you were contacted by them, they also went into your home and actually interviewed you, correct?
Yes, it was brief.
All right. Those law enforcement officers identified themselves as being associated with an agency that is not Massachusetts State Police. You understood that?
Yes.
And you understood that they were not involved with Canton Police Department either, correct?
Correct.
Completely separate agency, is that right?
Yes.
During the course of that interview, those officers informed you very specifically, Ms. McCabe, that it is a crime to lie to them, even during an interview, correct?
Yes.
Did you call them back and say, I'm calling you back because my husband told me that I lied to you and I better clear that lie up?
So sustained.
I'm sorry, did you tell Trooper Tully, quote, you had never met Elizabeth Proctor or Michael Proctor prior to September 2023, end quote?
I had never met Elizabeth
That's not my
Proctor
question.
prior. Well, there was a,
Did you tell Trooper Tully, Lieutenant Tully, that quote?
if I can break that quote up because it's two thick parts.
No, you can't.
So this has been asked and answered. Move on, Mr. Jackson.
Do you deny, as you sit here, telling Lieutenant Tully that quote that I just read? Do you deny it?
Sustained. Move along. The question's been answered.
Providing statements and have not engaged in any cover-up. They are not suspects in any crime. They are merely witnesses in the case. To have them accused of murder is outrageous. To have them harassed and intimidated based on false narratives and accusations is wrong. They are witnesses doing what our justice system asks of them. The autopsy of John O'Keefe was conducted by a forensic pathologist from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. The doctor found that the injuries that left John helpless in the cold were not a result of a fight.
Did you provide an opinion that it could be consistent with a punch?
I did provide that opinion.
Did you evaluate it all in your autopsy? Whether Mr. O'Keefe had any injuries consistent with a motor vehicle accident? Okay.
I'll allow that. Yes, I did examine his lower extremities. That is protocol in any case of suspected impact with a motor vehicle. So I did examine his legs and I did not see any evidence of an impact site.
And can you elaborate to the jury what you mean by no evidence of an impact site? Okay.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
What do you mean in your answer, no evidence of impact injuries?
I'll allow that. What I look for is some sort of bruise, either on the outside of the leg or bleeding on the inside after the skin is reflected in the soft tissues, or any fracture of the bones of the legs. I did not observe those things.
That was going to be my question. You did not observe any of those things, correct?
Correct.
She further found that the line of abrasions on his arm was consistent with blunt trauma, not an animal attack. A grand jury of everyday citizens heard the documented evidence and testimony before making a decision.
You were so detailed that you talked about where you were standing next to the cruiser open door, correct?
Yes.
What the others were doing, holding hands and praying, is that right?
Yes.
And the actual words used. You were as detailed about all of that as the actual words used. She asked her to Google hypothermia and how long, and then you stopped, Google hypothermia, end quote, correct?
Correct.
You will agree, at least for that purpose, you painted a very, very detailed picture in front of the grand jury, didn't you?
Yeah.
Except it's not true, is it?
I did not hear her ask that. I was told she was asked that.
The answer to my question, Ms. Roberts, and I'm not a trick question, what you told the grand jurors was not true. You never heard her, my client, ask anyone to Google anything, did you?
I did not.
And yet, that's what you testified to under oath, under penalty of perjury, in front of the grand jury, didn't you?
I did.
The subject of that murder indictment enjoys the constitutional presumption of innocence. Why should the witnesses who have committed no crime be afforded less by members of the community?
But these are so stupid, so arrogant, and it is the good old boys club. And you know what? Judge Beverly Cannone is a career prosecutor. She has spent her entire life and career dedicated to being a prosecutor. But this isn't just a bias, the kind of bias that you might expect because I am a career prosecutor and therefore sympathetic to the prosecution. No, no, no. Let's not get it crossed. This is a woman who was instructed very clearly, okay, very clearly to do everything in her power to make sure that Karen Read is found guilty, including eliminating and finding a reason to eliminate jurors because they were openly pro-defense in the courtroom. So don't be surprised when she tries to do it again, but don't shake your head disapprovingly at the Commonwealth because your will find itself outside of jury deliberation. And don't worry, they'll find a reason. Because I guess it turns out that Lieutenant Fanning is in charge of the jury, and wouldn't you know it? This case is all about the district attorney of Norfolk County trying to win this case. He's going to stop at nothing to do it. So you can expect all kinds of shenanigans, particularly if the defense's case in chief ends up being obviously very strong. You can guarantee that that judge is going to find a way to interfere on behalf of the Commonwealth. She's doing everything that she can to ensure that Karen Read is convicted. And she, make no mistake, has been directed to. And this little award that she was given by the Norfolk County Bar Association, this was them saying, "You're doing such a good job, Bev. Keep it up. Stay the course." This was their way of throwing her a bone to say, don't give up now. Don't let us down. I pray to God that the feds are watching because this is corruption. This is people who think that they are on the side of justice, putting their finger on the scales to try to tip the outcome that they want. The thing about this case that I'm starting to really understand, and it's funny because if you leave everything that you know personally from your experience in the past, everything about the way you think things are supposed to be, the way you think it's supposed to go, the way the prosecutor is supposed to behave, the way the defense team is supposed to behave, the way police are supposed to behave, if you leave all of that at the front door and just look at everything that has happened in this case, take it for what it is. If you do not ad-lib, if you do not bring any of your shit into the equation, what you see is what you get. These people are lying scumbags. And John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. Now, I've already covered that extensively. So if you haven't seen the video that I did on his injuries, you need to see it. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't let you just start showing pictures of dead bodies or comparing injuries easily. So it has to be done in a very specific way in order for them to allow me to show it, which is why I did it the way that I did. It has to be educational. But I encourage you to check that out because if you don't understand that this was not a car accident, you will once you see the injuries, what the injuries actually were to John O'Keefe's body. He was not hit by a car. And you know what? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see it. Although, luckily, we have two that are going to come and testify for the defense. But you don't even need them. All you need is half a brain in your head, and it'll be easy to see. So please, watch the video. Judge Beverly Cannone is in the pocket of the district attorney's office. And I can just say it because I am not a game attorney. And if you doubted it before, is there really any doubt now? Happy Memorial Day, everybody.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.